The new Batman Adventures episode Mad Love is one of my favorites from that show. Mind you, it deals with some really dark subject matter, but the story is told so well, and it's neat to get Harley Quinn's backstory. As such, I like my collection to reflect and tell similar stories, so Dr. Harleen Quinzel was a bit of a no-brainer when coming up with my to-do list. First of all, I want to welcome all of my new viewers. Grab a drink, have a seat, and let's get started. Be sure and hang around till the end to see a bonus custom that would pair well with your regular Harley Quinn. Let's start where we usually do with dremeling. What's that? She won't need much dremeling yet? Okay, let's take a look at the overall recipe then. The obvious choice for her body is Lois Lane, but she may be hard to come by these days unless she gets a re-release of some sort. She has the perfect overcoat look that goes slightly past her waist, and the skirt and heels are similar to Harleen's look. We'll just need to add her shirt collar, tie, and name tag, and then swap out her skirt with a longer one and paint her up. The head is a little different though. I went through a few different options for her head, but eventually landed on using this likeness of Gods and Monsters Wonder Woman. Her face is close enough to Harley's, and you'll only need to do some slight mods to get her where she needs to be. Remove Lois's head, and bonus, the Wonder Woman head fits perfectly on the original ball joint. Even the ball joint depth is correct for her neck length to look right. Oh, you'll want to remove Wonder Woman's helmet pieces from her cheeks and Dremel the top of her head down too. You'll also need to fill in and sand the cavities left over on her jaw from where the helmet details were. Once all that is done and sanded, you can move on to sculpting. There isn't a whole lot to sculpt here, but we will need to add a tie, shirt collar, and name tag to her body, as well as sculpt her new hair. The tie only requires very, very little epoxy, so try not to mix up too much. Additionally, since the collar is on top of the tie and epoxy takes a day to fully cure, you can't sculpt them at the same time. So that's another reason to mix up the right amount. Put down a tiny amount for the name tag, press it down, and cut away what you don't need for the shape. For me, sculpting is all about the negative shapes instead of trying to put the perfect amount on the first time. If you did make too much, you can always use that to make her hair. As mentioned, wait a day, then put down 2 small triangles for the collar. Same with the hair. You did the main chunk first, and next you can add the bun. I'm going to breeze over this a bit, but don't forget to sand everywhere that you're going to paint because the rougher surface is what helps the paint stick on. Now you're ready to dunk her in paint. She didn't have very much sculpting needed, and she also doesn't require very many paint colors. You'll only need a red, black, white, yellow, blue, and a skin tone. When you have raised elements stacked on top of each other, it's best to paint them in layers. The base of the shirt goes first, then the tie, then the collar, and lastly the overcoat. Now having said all that, you can see that I went out of order here. I think it's because the white takes so many coats and I wanted to see what it all might look like. As always, lay down very thin coats and build those up in layers as well to get the smooth finish you're after. I also went in and painted her eyes and eyelashes. For the eyes, it's best to start with the black for the outline as the base, then blue on top of that for her actual iris color. If you get a bit messy on the face work, you can always go back in and scrape away the excess if you have unpainted plastic underneath. Paint her hair yellow, and then you can move on to the next portion, a surprising category for sure, but they may take some time to get right. It's her glasses. 1/12 scale glasses are never easy to come by and even harder to make. Luckily, customizer extraordinaire Kaysen Piliad has already worked out the best method. If you don't know him by name, you've undoubtedly seen his work. He's one of the original DCAU customizers and still one of the best. He's had his website up for over 20 years now, and I've looked at it countless times over the years. He also recently sold off a lot of his original work. Google inanimate objects or check out Casimir.inanimateobjects on Instagram. Anyway, I'm using his recipe for her glasses, and it's fairly simple but can be time consuming. You'll want to grab a package of polystyrene rods and then any small piece of other plastic. The rod is for the frames and the other is for the bridge and stems. You'll want to slightly heat up the rod, and I do mean slightly because the heat gun will melt the end pretty quickly. Once you've heated it, take a sharp X-Acto knife and slice off the thinnest yet most even slice of the rod. Then for the bridge, I actually cut a small piece off of plastic that came from this car cup sized container of gum. Once you've cut all 3 pieces out successfully, you can frustratingly glue them together with my favorite superglue, Bob Smith Industries. Now you can paint them black, but set them aside till the end. You can glue them on now if you choose to, but these things are so fragile they're best left in a vault until everything else on Harleen is done. Fortunately, there's only one piece left, and that's her skirt. There are a couple of ways you can make this skirt, and my first attempt at it was using rubber. It took me a little while to find the right cutout sewing pattern needed, but I'll save you some time. I used this image, and after a few attempts came up with this template. It's always best to start your test shapes with paper templates first and fit and trim them accordingly before moving on to your final material. As mentioned, I used rubber the first time because I thought it would look more genuine to the figures, but it didn't work out at the end when I went to fit it in with the coat. The top bulged out too much and I accidentally snapped Lois's leg assembly while trying it. For attempt number 2, I turned to another legendary customizer's method, craft foam. Zelu1984 on Instagram has also been a constant source of inspiration and a wonderful resource. I can't imagine you haven't seen his work by now either, because he's made nearly every BTAS character you can think of in the same 1/12 scale, as well as getting started with licensed professional work with Mondo and NECA. Anyway, I couldn't make a Harley video without mentioning Tom and Kaysen because they're both super fans of her character and two absolute masters in the customizing craft. Check out the description below for links to both of their work. Back to the skirt. Simply trace your template onto a piece of this craft foam. I purchased mine at Michael's. You'll have a much easier time working with it and getting it to shape and fit the way you want it to. Wrap it around and then glue it together. Bonus, it's already black, so you don't even need to paint it. You could if you'd like, and I thought I would, but it's not totally necessary. For the seam, I made it disappear on the rubber attempt using this tester's molding putty, but again, you don't necessarily have to do that with the foam one. If you do, you'll obviously want to paint it all then to blend it together. With that done, pop her head back on, glue those glasses in place at the bridge, and she's nearly done. Wait, you want to accessorize her a little bit too. I made her a pen and a piece of paper using epoxy sculpt. Cut 2 very tiny pieces off of your mix, roll one up, and flatten the other one out. Cut an appropriately sized rectangle from the flat one and let them dry. Paint the piece of paper and slip both items into her hands. She's all done, and ready to diagnose any patients in Arkham. Speaking of one such patient, I mentioned hanging around to the end for a bonus custom, and here it is. A small tip to give your Joker that extra bit of rage in your display. If you own the BTAS Mad Hatter, then you know that he has these very specifically shaped hands. Turns out these are perfect to give to Joker to recreate his classic frustrated pose. Admittedly, they're a touch on the small side, but I think they made the original Joker hands just a hair too big anyway. The really nice thing is that you don't even need any paint either. Just a dab of glue on them to give them a little extra hold and twist them around for a minute so they don't completely glue in place. When combined with Joker Expressions Pack's Angry Head, you get that super frustrated look that Joker gets all too often around Harley. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Join me next time for another Justice Lord custom. Go ahead and leave any questions or requests for future characters in the comments below, and feel free to like and subscribe to get notified for my next video. Follow me on Instagram too, as I post a lot of finished customs up there well before these making of videos ever get made. Have a good one, and happy customizing.